And welcome to the sourcing report section of the Guided Imports A to Z sourcing service. Right now we're going to go through the sourcing section of our service, which is what happens after we validate a product. After we validate a product, our sourcing agents reach out to up to 100 suppliers, and we rapidly narrow down these suppliers to determine up to 5 qualified suppliers. These qualified suppliers are going to be suppliers that we're going to showcase to you. We're going to understand their capabilities, and they're going to be the ones that we're going to be sampling their products as well as negotiating with in hopes of determining the most ideal supplier for your desired product. So as we're going along with these demo videos, I can just go back and mention that the product that we are looking at is going to be a leather wallet that you can see here. The order quantity is 1,000 units, and we have an Amazon link as the similar product that we can view. Again, in all of our sourcing reports, you can see tabs at the bottom here where you can scroll through the report, and for this one we will be looking at the supplier sourcing section. Getting to it, the sourcing report is listed here where we name the suppliers supplier 1 through 4. We don't do this to hide the suppliers' names. In fact, the first aspect of the report is to indicate what the suppliers' names are, but we do this as an easy way to identify the suppliers because oftentimes factory names can be quite long and difficult for some of our clients to pronounce. So what you'll see is what this is indicating is that we have found 5 suppliers that we have deemed qualified to produce this sample product. Looking at it, what we indicate is the supplier's name, the type of supplier that we're dealing with. So in some cases it's a manufacturer, in some cases it's a manufacturer and trading company. We also indicate the city that each supplier is located in, and we'll list that all throughout the row here. Next aspect of the sourcing report is the business license number. This is the license number that we use to check up and make sure that they have necessary registered capital, as well as some other important things that we deem make a supplier qualified as opposed to unqualified. The next important thing that we like to note is whether or not they have a business bank account. The reason this is important to us is because it's a common scam for hackers to provide inaccurate bank accounts. And what we've noticed is in the event that a supplier urgently asks for an invoice or for the product to be paid and they're asking to send it to a personal bank account, this should always be a red flag. And the reason why we try to make this so clear is we try to only work with suppliers that do have business bank accounts. Any supplier that would not have a business bank account would not be a qualified one, and we like to indicate that so. The next piece of information we provide in the sourcing report is the payment options each supplier offers. So as we go down the line, you can see there's a couple of different options. Supplier 1 is TT, or telegraph transfer, which is just a regular bank transfer. Supplier 2 indicates that they can do a bank transfer and also trade assurance, which is Alibaba's service. It's an escrow service. And supplier 5 says that they can do a bank transfer, and they can also work with a letter of credit. So we like to indicate these options because some of our clients are particular to certain payment options. Some of the time it might be trade assurance. Other times it might be bank transfer. Either way, we like to show the options here, which are easy ways for us to review each supplier once we have all of the information. The next stage in the sourcing report is product information. So what we're doing here is we're trying to understand these suppliers' capabilities and what they can produce based on the specifications we've provided them about the product. Now, if you remember from the earlier demo review, we listed the product specifications below here. This product, which is the leather wallet, has 5 specifications. And when we look at the sourcing report, the first question we like to indicate is whether or not each supplier is capable of meeting the requirements listed by the client. And we do so here, and we can see that all of these suppliers are, yes, capable of meeting the specifications requested by the client. In the event that there's a specification that's not able to be met, it will be indicated here. But since all of these suppliers can meet these wallet specifications, this is left as an A. Next is the supplier's order quantity. So since the client requested an MOQ of 1,000 units, we've listed that all 5 suppliers can in fact do an MOQ of 1,000 units. Now the next interesting piece is the total price per unit. So this is after sourcing, but it's also important to keep in mind that this is prior to negotiation. This is what the supplier's quoted price is. And you can see the differences here go between about $4 and $6. And we like to have a nice range, because there's usually reasons that we can learn later on as to why some factory might be more expensive and why one factory might be less expensive. It's also important to remember these prices during the sampling stage, so we can look at what one supplier indicates as a more expensive product and compare it to a less expensive product, such as supplier 2 compared to supplier 5, in order to see if there are true differences or if it's just one factory charging much less than the other. The next section is us indicating the additional fees. If there are additional fees such as molding fees, tooling fees, or even certification fees, we'll indicate that here. But since there are no additional fees for this product, we have left it blank. Now, the next section are the payment terms. This is how are we going to pay the factory? And we break this down based on the initial deposit, and then once we've confirmed the goods and once our quality inspectors have checked the goods and the goods can be released, what is the final amount? So what we can see is supplier 1, their terms are a 30% deposit and 70% on completion. Supplier 2 indicates that they need a 50% deposit and 50% on completion, and so forth. The most common ones that we see are 30/70 and 50/50. We usually try to work with 30/70 for normal order quantities, but sometimes factories who are working with lower order quantities might bump their payment terms up to 50/50 just to cover their expenses. The next section are the Incoterms. Now, since we've already indicated previously on the validation report that the most ideal shipping method is going to be by sea, the Incoterms that we're asking quotes for are going to be FOB, which we've indicated here. However, there's one factory that seems to have quoted us with an EXW price, which is one of the reasons why the prices is much lower. This is something that should be concerned, and this is something that we will want to determine whether or not they can do an FOB price in the event we decide to use this supplier and we want to move forward with shipping their products by sea. The next section is the production time. So the production time or lead time is basically how long the product is going to take to get made at the factory. All of these products are within about 20 to 40 days, and they are all indicated as so. The next section is sample fee. So the sample fee is the cost of purchasing samples from each supplier and having them sent to our warehouse in Shenzhen. The sample fees are indicated here. Now, a lot of the time, a supplier will indicate that the sample fee is much higher than the normal cost. The reason they do this is to determine whether or not you're a serious buyer. A non-serious buyer might not pay a large sample fee, but a serious buyer would have no problem paying a large sample fee with the understanding, for the most part, that the supplier will refund the money after the order is placed. The next section is the sample lead time. How long is it going to take to get the samples sent, or to get the samples produced and sent to our warehouse in Shenzhen? And finally, is the sample fee refundable, yes or no? So we can see that the expensive sample fees for these suppliers, so supplier 1 that charges $50, their sample fee is refundable if we place the order. We can look at supplier 5, their sample fee is refundable if we place the order. A sample fee that's $10, they're not going to refund that, most likely just because it's an inexpensive sample. The next section is the quality overview. We want to determine whether or not quality control is allowed. So some factories, when we inform them that we're going to have an inspector go to their factory, there are times where they will tell us they're not comfortable with that. In the event that they're not comfortable with that, we will indicate this as so. But this is one of those red flags for us, where if a factory is uncomfortable with us having one of our inspectors go, we're probably not going to include them on the qualified supplier report, purely based on the fact that we would rarely qualify a supplier that's keen to hide something. The next aspect of the quality overview is the supplier QMS, or quality management systems. Quality management systems is essentially how does the supplier handle quality. And there are certifiable ways that a factory can use to handle in-house quality control, and we list them as so. So for supplier 1, their QMS, or they do not have QMS. For supplier 2 and 3, for supplier 2, they have ISO 9001. Supplier 3 has ISO 2008. 4 doesn't have any, and supplier 5 has ISO 9001. These are all important things to understand when determining the product and whether or not the supplier is going to be taking their quality control seriously or not. Now, the next aspect are supplier documentation links. In the event that the supplier has quotations, photos, or certifications, we'll link them here. So you can see for the most part, keep in mind this is just a demo, so we wanted to hold off on providing quotations, but we provided one example of a quotation which can be found here. And for the most part, this will be filled with valid information on real sample reports. But for a demo, we're not gonna compromise any factory information by providing that for you. Now the next aspect is the contact information. The contact name. Now again, in the demo, we're gonna indicate their names are A, B, C, D, and E. But in a real report, what we'll do is we'll give you the sales agent's full name or the sales manager's full name. We'll also provide their email address, their phone number, and if they have another form of communication such as Skype, WeChat, QQ, Line, etc. Going down on our sourcing report, we add our comments. So again, the comment section is important for us to explain our findings of the suppliers. If there are any things that we are concerned about, if we liked one supplier much more than the other, if there are things we want you to know, or even if we have questions that we'd like to have answered so we can get back to the suppliers, sometimes we'll put them here. Some of the time suppliers will have marginally different products, and if that is the case, we'll try to indicate the differences in the samples, or I'm sorry, in the comment section. And any type of important information will usually be found here in the early stages. You'll also be engaging in open dialogues with your account representative at this stage in the game, as they're going to be giving you additional information about our process and our progress from sourcing your suppliers. The very final thing we like to point out after providing you with our final comments, and the final comments is usually just our final thoughts, whether or not we have one supplier that we like much more, or we think that you need to spend some time reviewing certain aspects of samples or things like this. But the very final thing that we like to note is that the sourcing report is only valid for 15 to 20 days. This is for the most part set by the factories. Factories don't like to quote prices and freeze those prices for extended periods of time, purely based on the idea that commodity prices change, and they cannot ensure that their costs will always stay the same. So we make a validity date of 15 to 20 days. This is the entire sample report. Again, if there are any questions at any point in this, never hesitate to reach out to us. You can always email us at info@guidedimports.com. We will have links to this sample report so you can go through and review it on your own as well. But if you stay tuned, the next aspect of this demo will be the sample report, which is what our clients look at once we receive samples of the products into our warehouse in China and prior to us shipping them directly to them in a consolidated single shipment. Thank you, and continue to have a great day.